Hello and welcome to the Mobius Development Podcast, a real-time development log of a senior game development project. I'm Casey.
I'm Amanda.
And I'm Alex.
And what a sprint. What a 2 weeks.
It's true.
Just happened there.
Wow.
It's true. I mean, technically we've got 5 days left.
Hey.
But
that's fine.
That's fine.
That's fine.
A significant amount of days.
It's true. It's 1/3.
Yeah, it is 1/3. You're right.
Yeah. But it's not going to have that much work in it, I don't think.
No,
we're coming up on a long weekend after some events, which we will get into later in the podcast.
Really,
so
really dig into those events.
Mm-hmm.
But let's start at the top though. What
Yes.
has changed in the last 2 weeks?
What has changed in the last 2 weeks? Well, we've had our first digital playtest, which was cool. We have totally changed the way we're doing our sprint planning so that now only the tech side of things is on the sprint plan, and then the puzzle and the art. And I don't know about the narrative, if there are like well-defined narrative tasks. Probably
not. That
not.
I'm aware of, no.
Yeah, but
Maybe once they like get into having to produce written narrative.
Yeah.
But not
all
now.
of the sub-teams basically have their own task management systems in place now. But we haven't really had a good chance to test that yet.
Well, we will when we have when the newly revamped puzzle team produces a master list of puzzles.
Yes.
That are like, we're not going to change them anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Then we can start doing things.
Yes.
Like that's what I'm really looking forward to, is having tasks.
Yeah, so one thing that's changed is that puzzle team revamp. I think we mentioned on the last podcast we were considering adding an external collaborator to the puzzle team. Well, we did.
We
Yep.
did do that. If
Or
you
rather-
were on the edge of your seat,
If you wanted to know if it was like the thing that's been like keeping you going the last 2 weeks, we did.
Mhm.
we did
I
do
did
that.
add
mean,
one.
I think it's less that we added her and she added her. So, she agreed to
Yeah.
be
I
added.
conducted an interview.
Yeah.
I said, okay, cool. If you want to do the team, you can do it. And then Kelly's like, congratulations, you're on the team. And I was like, well, she didn't say that she wants to be
Yeah.
on the
No,
team
you
yet.
don't jump the gun like that.
But then a few days later, she was on the team.
Yeah. And then we were good.
And then we were good.
And then we told the puzzle team, hey, make puzzles faster.
Make puzzle ideas.
Yeah. Or I wouldn't necessarily say maybe faster is the wrong word. It was don't polish them as much this early on.
Yes.
I think was
make
the big one.
puzzles more broadly.
I think
Yeah.
that's especially a sticking point for Kelly because
Yeah.
I think she's a bit of a perfectionist. She wants to polish everything. It's like,
Yeah.
wait a second.
We're gonna get a chance to polish it, just not now.
Yeah,
This
yeah.
is pre-production.
It's not polish time.
It's pre-production.
It's true.
How
it's
is this
true.
still pre-production?
This is still pre-production.
Yeah, it's. I don't think that's very well defined at all. It's we've transitioned into production
Yeah.
at some point. We've
with
started
air
making
quotes.
permanent assets and whatnot.
It definitely goes asset to asset, whether or not we're in pre-production or production on certain
Yeah.
things. But yeah, it's weird because we don't have several years
Yeah.
like you would if you were making a game at a studio.
We've got 20 weeks.
Yes, and even then, yeah, you can add weeks. Say spring
Yeah.
break kind of counts.
Well, I
and
was
then-
gonna say 22 if we're feeling up to it. I might record some audio over spring break.
Yeah, I might do some bug fixing.
Yeah, there might some work might get done over spring
Yeah.
break. Let's not say none.
But it's not a sprint.
It's not a sprint. No, we're not gonna expect people to do work.
No.
But those of us that like to work will do work.
Yes.
Make my own video game.
Yeah.
It's like, I could have done work on this, but I decided to make my own.
Yes. 2-week production cycle.
2-week
That's something
production
I can get
cycle, beginning to
behind.
end. I just made QWOP. Again.
But yeah, so if we rewind the calendar back to last Tuesday, that is when we had our first digital playtest.
It was February 4th. I'm looking at my notes.
Wow.
February
Nice.
4th, 2020.
That does make sense.
Yeah.
Yes, on February 4th, 2020, we had our first
Only
digital.
10 days ago.
Oh
Only
my
10
God.
Only 10 days ago. Feels like 6 years, but it was 10 days ago.
It was 10 days ago. And it went pretty well. We got a lot of feedback from a lot of different people. We got a lot more playtesters from outside of the class than I originally expected, which I think was cool.
We had a total of 18 playtesters, which was 9 playtest sessions, seeing as our game is a 2-player game. So that's a significant number of people.
And it took them like 15 minutes to get through it. So it was a good amount of like playtest time, just low on the numbers. Because King Rumble's gameplay cycle is like 2 minutes. They got like 30 people.
Yeah, you can have a high turnover when your game is that quick.
Yes. Which is cool that we were able to keep people engaged for as long as we did. I thought that was one of the things that was nice to see.
Yeah, none of the teams that played gave up, walked away. Everyone solved the puzzle, and everyone had fun. I mean, according to what they told us.
Yeah, everyone who commented.
Everyone lied to our faces.
Yeah, and we got some staff people interested in our no networking gimmick that
it's still breaking Michael trying to figure out how to do it.
Confuses the tech professors.
Yeah. There was a lot of good over the shoulder interest too, because I know that like both Tad and Elizabeth were like, "Ooh, a thing," and I'm gonna like once we have some new build stuff, I'm gonna email Tad and be like, "You want to play that thing?"
There was a significant number of other senior games students watching other people play games as well, so that was pretty cool. Should we talk about some of the specific feedback that we got from that playtest?
I think that we should.
Would you like to see my notes?
That is okay. Would you like to pick something that you like from those notes and vocalize it?
Yes, I can do that. So one thing that was said in our third playtest by one of my friends who played was that to solve a puzzle alone felt overwhelming, but it helped to talk to a partner and felt that it was similar to rubber duck coding, like working something out simply by speaking it aloud to someone else. And I thought that was some really good feedback. On that note, we had a lot of different methods that people used to solve the same puzzle, some which we didn't see coming, which was really cool. There were people that pulled out their phones to write down hints. There were people that one person was eliminating options and the other person was implementing the correct solution. There was a team that worked just through verbal communication. There was a lot of different methods, and I thought that was really cool to see. It's hard to predict what methods people will use because it kind of depends on personality.
I know some people did lean directly into brute forcing, but that ended up being a minority in the end, which just kind of meant that we need to work some brute force checks into it.
Yeah, I think the feedback about brute forcing is more about the general feel of the puzzle and the difficulty level of the puzzle than it is about the fundamental principle of brute forcing. I feel like it's one of those instances where all these people are giving you feedback on a thing, but the feedback is addressing an issue, but it's not necessarily that they know the perfect solution to that issue.
Yeah, it's just that it is present. And
that there is an issue.
Yeah, because one of the consistent things that we heard was that this is a pretty hard puzzle, and it felt at times discouraging to start out with a really hard puzzle that was pretty deep in the weeds on the logic type of puzzle where you've got different comparisons and you're trying to figure out the right order to put things in. Which hopefully in our vertical slice will not be an issue as we have a smaller
we've got
puzzle.
That buffer puzzle in there to go, hey, here's a thing that's self-contained and easy to solve, but you still need your other person to do it.
And ideally there will also be like that little tutorial moment at the very beginning of the game. So hopefully there will be more of a ramp up to this difficult puzzle. I think.
Maybe like a little bit of what comes next too, if we can jump into that second one. I think we might be able to get like 1 in a stub, or did we say 2 in stubs? I forget what we said that the tech goal was.
I think 2 puzzles and then stubs for the rest.
So it was the 2 majors and then stubs. Okay. All right.
Yeah, I think. No, I don't. That was a lie.
You don't think?
I don't
you
think.
don't have thoughts? Nah. That's fine. We're 6 weeks in. You don't need to have any brain cells anymore.
That is fair. Playtesting.
Yes. There was definitely a lot of people that wanted it to be networked who were like saying that they want to be able to message the other player The professor feedback talked a lot about consequence, and that's where Michael, our tech professor, was really getting stuck. He was like, how do you do consequence without networking? We were like, well,
you don't.
Yeah. And I think that's another one of those places where it depends on how you view our game, and we don't have a solid view ourselves of what our game is. Because if you view our game like our TA does, as an interactive narrative game, then it's less important to have consequences because you're just being shuffled through the narrative. If you think of our game like Michael does as a series of logical puzzles, then it's important to have motivation in order to solve those puzzles correctly and not just throw paint at the wall and see what sticks.
Yeah, I think in the end we probably want a mix of the two, wherein we keep that interactive narrative element of consequence maybe isn't the most important thing to implement, because that's what TikTok does, if I'm not mistaken, is that they don't have dedicated consequences if you fail consistently.
Because I think TikTok leans more towards being an interactive narrative than it does towards being a puzzle.
Yeah.
And
we've leaned a little bit more towards puzzle, at least.
Yeah, at least in the beginning.
Bit. Yeah.
Especially since we had such a difficult puzzle at the beginning.
Yeah.
I feel like it sets up the game as this is a game where you're solving difficult mental puzzles.
Yeah. I think once we get some of the easier ones in there, it will be that vibe will go away a little bit.
Yeah. More set up.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely we're somewhere in the middle, which is more what Marcella wants us to be.
Yeah, we're kind of in the... Well, I mean, where Marcella wants us to be, because we talk to him every single week.
Yes.
And now that schedules have gone a little screwy, 2 days in a row every other week.
Yeah.
Yeah, we scheduled office hours with Marcelo for every other week when we weren't having meetings with him, but because of events that we will get into discussing, the schedule has shifted.
The schedule, I think, shifted because of the
playtesting.
It was
shifted because of playtesting.
Yeah, it wasn't shifted because of
So rather, we had assumed that we just wouldn't meet with Michael, but in fact,
it was
our odd-even
nudged.
split had been nudged.
And then we're like,
right.
well, I guess we're going to meet with Marcelo for 5 minutes on Tuesdays, and then immediately again for 30 minutes to an hour, depending on whether that cursed 3:30 slot team shows up or not.
And we also learned recently that Michael also has sign-up office hours, so we might
want to just have the tech guys start to meet with him a little bit.
We might have Michael, Marcelo, Marcelo, Marcelo.
I mean, we could do that. We could schedule some Michael hours.
I think it might be a good idea.
Yeah, I think having them both is nice, because I think if we get too much Marcelo, then we, not to say that there's anything wrong with too much Marcelo.
Yeah.
But I think you need a good mix of external opinions.
Yeah, because it's impossible not as a person giving feedback to try to make the project more like what you would want it to be.
Yeah.
And it's impossible as a team receiving feedback, if you only get it from one person, to turn your game into the thing. So we don't want to meet with Marcelo so much that our game is Marcelo's game. So we need a lot of different sources of feedback.
Yeah. Also do double Michael meetings.
Double Michael meetings, I think, might be a good idea. Also, he's just enthusiastic about it, and we gotta hook those enthusiastic people, even if they're our professors.
Yeah, exactly. Now, here, whenever he talks to us about it, he seems so excited about what it has the potential to be. So,
yeah. So speaking of instructor meetings, after we had our playtest, our first playtest, was it the very next day?
It was the very next day.
The very next day we met with Marcelo
we went to
again.
The Marcelo corner.
And we got another almost an hour with Marcelo because
the full hour.
Yeah, the 3:30 group just doesn't show up.
Nope. Was it the same group both times? The 3:30 group didn't show up.
Not.
Interesting.
It's just
a cursed
people don't like
slot.
showing up at 3:30.
3:30 is a cursed slot.
I don't like it.
Power to them.
Yeah.
Right?
Thank you for not showing up, because we got an extra 30 minutes of feedback.
I'm perfectly happy with that.
Honestly, a huge difference in the conversation you can have in a 30-minute time slot than an hour time slot. I mean, I am definitely not upset to have an hour.
Is definitely some time lost either end for logistics. That means that our normal 20-minute meetings are more like 10-minute meetings, which is not...
that's like no time at all.
Yeah,
no time at all.
There's
you
no
one thing.
There's no back and forth available in that sort of space.
Yeah. I think those meetings are intended to more be like progress checks than any attempt to get feedback.
Yeah.
I think office hours are the place you go and get that actual feedback.
Unless you have like a really burning question, but then we
That's
haven't
the
so
one
far.
burning question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you get that answer and then you leave.
Yeah, so our Marcelo office hours, I think it's fair to say that our main focus in those office hours with him was discussing the narrative and the puzzles, because he really feels that we need to have a why in these puzzles, a why that the players can grab onto and sort of dig into, and not necessarily like, oh, just because you're going to unlock this puzzle piece that you use to, complete the game. It needs like a narrative connection.
Yeah.
And also contextualizing that view based on everything I've heard from him in ADG. He's very, very like pushing people towards making decisions and not choices. So it's like we need to know why we're doing something every time we put something into the game. Otherwise, it's just we could have done XYZ and we were like
picked Y.
Yeah, it's
but
like
we didn't
I
have
like Y. That sounds cool, but
Yeah,
we didn't have any
like
backing.
This is why we picked Y.
Yeah.
We need more of that. And I think the narrative meetings are leading towards that now. I think that's Christie's new super goal.
Yes. Yeah. One of the things too that we got out of that is that we should probably flip our intensity v time graph to a more traditional story arc that has a bit more engagement.
Yeah. Like, it was an interesting idea to have it in reverse, but that didn't have, like, meaningful gameplay progression. Because hard in the beginning, easy at the end is like, oh, it's not been hard for a long time.
Yeah, and I think we've had a lot of interesting, sort of more out there ideas, but there is a certain threshold at which your game has too many interesting ideas and you can't work within those constraints in order to make something that's...
We have plenty of out there ideas. Like, no networking is an out there idea enough to be like, everything else can be pretty typical, but this one thing makes it different enough.
Also in that Marcelo conversation, we talked about multiple other things, like various lengths for puzzles. We talked about letting the humans be the computers and doing non-networking stuff by having humans to do those things for us. One example could be if we talked about a lot of examples. Do you have one you could bring off the top of your head? Because I kind of don't.
Examples of... Say that again?
Of letting humans be the computer since we don't have networking.
Yeah, I don't know if he gave us any specific examples.
I know we talked about some specific examples with Michael, too.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. There were. I think it was just kind of the broad card game example of card games do it this way, so maybe do it the way card games do it.
It's true, but even then, I think Marcelo realized, like, during that example that card games are inherently networked because they have the communal space
Yeah,
of
when you
the
don't
table.
have that space, you're like...
it limits you even more. But I think there are things that you can learn from card games about how to do, especially, like, asymmetric information, because so many card games are based off of the idea of asymmetric information.
Yeah, you've got, hidden information in your hand and various things like that.
So I think that was sort of the general example, was like, look at card games and board games because they're sort of the closest to what we're doing.
Yeah.
Even though most board games and card games are competitive rather than collaborative, which also is a design challenge of, like, how do we adapt these ideas from card games but make them collaborative rather than
There are
competitive.
collaborative board games out there, but not in kind of the same vein, because I don't think we can really use stuff like Pandemic and Betrayal at the House on the Hill is not a good example because it gets competitive at the end.
Yeah, and then there was also the idea of escape rooms and sort of the escape room in a box, which is a classic example of, like, a collaborative board, like, card game or board game. But yeah, those things are expensive.
Yes, they are. They're rough to do. I think we'll get to doing one eventually. Probably, if not near the end of this quarter, probably very early in the next one, when we start kind of digging slightly more into hardcore implementation and polish rather than, like, kind of just getting it in so that we have an idea of what we want.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
One other thing in my notes that we talked to Marcelo about that I think is important to not forget is we have sort of struggled with like how much character do we want versus how much do we want the players to be themselves in this game. And what Marcelo pointed out to us that I think is really pertinent is that people like to roleplay. So if we give the characters enough character that we can use them to tell a story, that is not automatically taking away from the player's experience of identifying with that player,
You can dive into
with that
a
character. So
that kind of sentiment was echoed at the picket line on Monday.
Yes, and I think not to get into that yet, but I think that is a good feedback, because I think one of the things in the long list of things that were sort of out there that we were doing was the idea of not characterizing our main characters at all. But I think that might be one of the things that has to take a step back for our other sort of more out there ideas.
We can. We don't have to characterize them a lot, but just enough so that there's a role that you can slide into.
Yeah, and so that we can give them a story.
Yeah, like as characterized as like Pokemon Red and Blue. Red, he's present, he's driven, but he's doesn't have any other character traits beyond that. He wears a red hat.
I think that one sort of difficulty we've come across in some of our decisions so far is that there's not always been everyone we need at all the meetings, like with professors and office hours and things like that. Like, a lot of this information is coming to part of the team, and then we have to convey it to the rest of the team.
And that's just... I don't think we can solve the Marcelo office hours problems because half the team has a class at that time.
Class, and some people have work at different times, different days. I mean, it's definitely not something we can just easily solve, but I do think it has been part of why the process of making some of the like narrative decisions especially has been a little bit slower. Because I have actively tried to like not be the narrative lead, because if I did, that'd be too much on my plate for one thing, and for another thing we have a narrative lead. Like, you know, if she can't always make it to these things, then these things get communicated more slowly, and then it takes more time to, convey that feedback to that specific person who can implement it.
I think we should look into, like, after those Marcelo meetings, just, like, directly getting all of the pertinent narrative information to her right away. Yeah,
it's happened, too, with some of the puzzle feedback as well, and I just think it's sort of, you know, that's just one example of the slow communication process.
Yeah, and I think that's something that we're all still learning as, like, the people that are going to these, like, feedback sessions and receiving this feedback is, like, it's on us to make sure that everybody's on the same page.
Yeah.
I think there's been a lot of instances where somebody will say something and you'll be like, whoa, I had no idea that you were on such a different page than me about this subject. And it's
I thought we'd said
in my head, I thought everyone was totally like, this is the way that this thing is. And it's like, that's crazy.
Yeah, it surprises me a lot, too, because it seems that at least, like, collectively the three of us here tend to be on the same page, and then we'll go to a meeting after we've recorded this podcast or gone to talk to Marcelo, and we'll be like, oh, wow. This is vastly different from the perspective that we had. What happened?
Well, I think even among the three of us, there are sometimes miscommunications. Like on last Tuesday, we sat down at Casey's apartment, and me and Alex immediately had like a conflict of like, we're on a different page about how much empty space there should be. And it's like, it seems like a trivial detail, like when you say it like that, but it isn't.
And even during that conversation, we had it was sort of a miscommunication of like me saying how much empty space there should be and me saying how things should be operated as to where that decision shouldn't be on me, you know? But I think it is something that we're still working on, and we're going to have please, we're going to have everybody in the same room on Tuesday.
Desperately hope that we'll have everyone in the same room.
At least once a week. We need it.
Yeah,
we need a State of the Union address.
We need a State of the Union address, yes. We need one with facts, which are few and far between these days. Let's go ahead and alienate any people that don't like facts.
Rip in peace.
Rip in peace.
Well, if you're done with that tangent.
I'm done with that tangent.
Okay, I just wanted to specifically say one more thing about the space issue. I think another aspect of that miscommunication between me as the art director and Alex as the producer, and also as a tech team member, is there are two issues actually going on here. There's the design aspect of how busy do we want the screen to be and how hard we want the player to search for the clues, versus like movability within Unity. You know, like you need a blank background, you need a blank room so that the tech team has some malleability between iterations of like placing objects.
Yeah.
And then, you know, you can't just bake in here is a poster on the wall all the time.
Yeah.
So there was that layer of the miscommunication, and then there was also the miscommunication layer of the aesthetically, like, do we want, I mean, none of us thought it was a like hidden object game, but a lot of the feelings I got from the art team was like, it's too empty and it feels like boring. And so I was trying to... Like,
I can agree that at least the current background does feel very empty. I think it's because it's a very spacious room and we've put nothing in it. As opposed to, like, if we maybe just kind of crunched that room down, those things in it would make more sense.
But we didn't want it to be a cramped small room either.
Yeah.
Like, it's a museum, so...
Yeah, and I think given what we saw this last weekend, too, we have a much better idea of how to fill that space with information that's not necessarily relevant, but just that makes the space feel more realistic.
Yeah, so those are the two sort of layers of that specific miscommunication, I guess. It wasn't really a miscommunication. It was more of just like there hadn't been enough communication yet, is my way of feeling about that conversation. And those are the kind of things that can happen on a team this size, I think.
Yeah, and it is a good example of where there's a trade-off, because if every single asset was baked into the background, the overall scene would look better as a scene. Yeah. But it would be less easy to make it interactable, and it would be less easy to, if we wanted later in 172, like, oh, we want to change this thing, or oh, we want to add a visual effect when you
do this thing.
Tap to zoom in on an object. Those things become harder. But then one good example that you brought up during that conversation was like making sure that the shadows are perfectly lined up so that it's very clear where the light sources are. Things like that might have to not be as perfect as they could be for the sake of having things be rearrangeable in the space.
And the shadows example is specifically because this is a 2D game. Like, you know, if this was a 3D game, it's like shadows, like, don't even sweat. Like, the game engine is rendering your shadows in real time. Whereas in a 2D game, we don't have ray casting, and the shadows are, you know, painted basically just like the other assets. So I guess my main worry with the shadows was not having like a flat interactable object on a background with no shadow to indicate that it's actually in the world space. I mean, Alex very cleverly pointed out, oh, he could just make it a PNG, a shadow PNG that's just the shadow. And I was like, yeah.
You could do that. Yeah.
I could also write you a shader, and then every asset would need a normal map if you're up for that.
I mean, that's a thing
polish.
We could do if we opt for shaders.
Yeah.
Because writing shaders is not the hardest thing in the world. It's just not fun.
I have had to write a shader.
There are harder things than writing shaders.
No, my issue was not with that they're hard. My issue was that they are very fun.
Okay. Oh, okay. All right. We're getting a different. All right.
I think shaders are a lot of math. The one time that
they
I
are
had
a lot
to
of
make
math.
a shader for a class, I worked on it, and then I was like, Alex, I am not a math major. You are a math
man
major.
Write the shader.
Please help me.
And look at this. This guy really loves math and
right?
Shaders.
Right? It's a good time.
You sound so critical.
I'm trying not to be. I'm trying to say, teach me your ways. Tell me how to make shaders fun. Because I never took the shaders course.
Shaders was 1 week in the Unity class.
Yeah. It was the entire 160 computer graphics class. And then I lost there was a award at the end where you could win a mug, and I lost it to a game made in Unity because it looked a lot better. Because it was made in Unity, and mine was an engine made from scratch.
Yep, and you didn't get the
but
mug.
it was a vote.
It was a vote. It's like, oh, this one looks better.
That's my rant about not getting a mug.
Okay, I wanna
Like
dig into this a little bit. Did everybody know that it was in Unity?
They did.
Was it broadly known? Okay.
They did.
And that didn't impact their voting at all?
No, they were pure CS people. They assumed Unity was just as hard as writing your own engine.
Oh, okay, I see.
But yeah, didn't you get runner-up or something like that?
Yeah, I got a textbook.
That's not a mug.
Not as good as a mug.
It's technically more expensive than a mug.
It was
but
more.
It's not a mug.
It was a custom mug that said CS 160 on the side with like pictures. It was a great mug.
Were you able to get resale on the textbook at least?
No, I still have it.
Is it an interesting textbook?
Pass.
I'm not gonna say.
What's next on our itinerary? Was that the Marcelo meeting conversation?
That was the Marcelo meeting conversation. It ended up this. It ended up you ranting about a bug.
That is the extended Marcelo meeting conversation. Next up on our podcast itinerary is the Exploratorium.
Yes.
Oh my god, I love the Exploratorium.
Yeah, that was great. That was it was so nice to plan a thing and then have everything that I plan to do be open. That was an upgrade.
So walk it back, Casey. Tell us from the top.
Okay, we're walking it back. Where do we want to walk it back to? Do we want to walk it back?
Well, tell our ignorant listeners who have no idea what we're talking about. What is the Exploratorium and why did we go there?
Okay,
the views of Amanda Leisowitz do not represent the views of the Mobius podcast.
I'm just saying,
you are a very intelligent listener.
Not everyone lives in the Bay Area.
Not everyone knows what this is. Yes, so the Exploratorium is a museum on the Embarcadero in San Francisco that is a let's make science fun kind of place, but it's also got a lot of like kind of a mix between like science exhibits and like visual art pieces that kind of do a little bit of both. So I think it was, what was the one, the ambiguous cube. But it was a kind of a loose location inspiration for some of our how our spaces in game would be filled out. So we opted to get the whole team into 2 cars and then onto a train and then onto another train and then on foot for a while, all the way out to that exhibit or that museum and check it out, take a bunch of pictures, kind of just document so that we can go, oh, they do it like this, so maybe we do this thing like this. So we've got like a Google Drive full of pictures of signs and exhibits, and let's go like what do they have here? How is it interactable? Just as a guest, and then go, okay, how do we take that interactivity? How do we make it a puzzle? And then how do we split it between 2 people? And I know some of the things that the puzzle team have latched onto were some things that I found, like the Newton light prisms was a thing that people have latched onto. A lot of light. People really latched onto the light-based exhibits. Yeah. Less so on the sound stuff, which kind of bummed me out. But, with the way we're doing it, sound probably wouldn't be the best idea anyway.
Yeah, it's hard to do asymmetric information with sound unless we force people to wear headphones.
And I don't want to force people to wear headphones.
As a point of reference, TikTok Tale for 2 had a Morse code sound puzzle that gave me and Alex a lot of trouble.
That was definitely the hardest and least polished of the puzzles in that game.
Exploratorium had Morse code too.
It did.
Couldn't think of a thing that was very funny to say, so I just thought of something that was lowbrow to say instead. But overall, there was a lot of like kind of interesting ways that we could tackle puzzle design and like kind of space design, and it's a shame that we didn't have any of our puzzle people around today to talk about that. But yeah, that whole trip was something I think that beyond just getting the location stuff, but it was a good kind of functioning team builder in terms of like let's go and like not really think about work too much, even though we thought about work when we were in the museum, and like let's just go and like be friends at this place. And I think that worked out really well. That the 2 unexpected detours made that day between lunch in the museum and the museum and leaving were great fun.
For some people.
For some people, yes.
I say that because I know that both of you 2 were very stressed by the end of the day.
We were very stressed. And then I got my crepe and I was okay for a bit.
I also, in retrospect, was like, that was a good crepe.
It was, yeah.
See, my only regret was convincing you to share crepe with me, Alex, because afterwards I was like, We could have had our own crepes.
Yeah, could have had more.
Wow.
They were good crepes.
Wow. You were so convincing.
I was
Yeah,
really
it was-
convincing.
It was such an easy upsell at that crepe shop too, because I was like, I'll get strawberries and whipped cream, and they're like, do you want ice cream with that? And I was like, yeah, I do want
See,
ice cream
my-
with that.
my
You know
dilemma.
that I do want it, and you're trying to force me to do it.
No, they're not. They weren't trying. There's like, you could get it with ice cream, and I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna get it with ice cream.
My dilemma was that I wasn't really hungry. I was not super hungry, so I said, Alex, let's share. But next time, Alex, this is my record, my promise to you going on record. I will get you your own crepe next time we're in San Francisco.
Next time you two end up in Japantown.
Yes.
Japantown is
Yeah.
fun. I'm sure we will be back. I like the stationery stores. I like the bookstore. I like the crepes.
It's true.
Yeah, other things learned from that day. I got to put boba on large trip schedules, or
Yes. There are
there will
some.
be a riot.
There are some individuals who will riot if
There are
no
some
boba.
individuals who will quote unquote riot if
Yes.
I do not provide them with milk tea.
Yes.
So
So we had to add two
two
separate
boba stops.
boba
Two
stops.
separate boba stops. One because the first one was not very good.
No, the first
some
one was
people.
was
I think,
trash.
yeah, the first one was kind of hit or miss. Like, I really
It was
liked the drink
kinda
I got,
hipstery.
but
Yeah.
two people did not, so we
Yeah.
made a second boba stop.
I did not
Yeah.
try anything with boba in it, but it seemed like their boba was a bit out there.
Yeah. Yeah, weird in a way. Then there was that big old walk over Chinatown, I think.
Yeah, it was
Mhm,
through
mhm.
Chinatown.
Okay, through Chinatown.
Yeah.
Because I know some of the signs I recognized as being in Korean at one point. So I'm like, I'm not sure if we've crossed over into Koreatown. So I'm gonna just take
Yeah.
a shot out there. I think it was Chinatown. On the map, it was Chinatown.
I believe it was Chinatown. I think China characters got a lot of lines. Korea characters got a lot of loops.
Yes.
Japan characters got a couple of lines.
Yeah. Well, we were in Japantown too. So
Yes.
those are the big two. That's where the karaoke idea came from.
Yes.
But that's a future thing.
But yeah, a lot of good team building.
Yeah.
And especially for like Kelly and the other puzzle design focused members of the team, I think there was a lot of
especially.
good puzzle inspiration. I think like myself, I was more just like, look at these cool things.
Yeah,
I'm
we
gonna play
were
with
able to go
them.
look at these cool things. Yeah, but the puzzle people, I think, very much benefited
Yeah,
from seeing that space and looking at it analytically the whole time.
Yeah, taking notes and things.
Yeah, we were more. Oh, I can use Morse code to tell Alex to eat shit.
I'm gonna have to bleep you.
You are
get
gonna have to
bleeped.
bleep
That's
me.
our first bleep.
It's the first bleep. Yeah, you're gonna have to bleep me.
Wow, what a world.
What a world. It was gonna have to happen at some point.
We got 2
That's fair.
episodes in.
Yes, we did.
Now I'm gonna have to go through the video, find this bleep, and like put a little
Censor bar.
not a sensor. You know when you have like the @ symbol and the like dollar sign over the
Over
the animation
over
in the
bird.
in the YouTube video.
Yes, absolutely. I'm real glad I did that now. I think I marked episode 2 as explicit because I think I swore in that one as well,
Oh,
but not as
interesting.
not bleepable.
Parental advisory.
There's a parental advisory on that one.
All right.
So yeah, fun team builder. It was a full day of travel and museum
Very
exploration.
very full day.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what it's like when you take the
Yeah.
train. But that's better than parking a car in San Francisco.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
yeah.
Yeah.
You can be so excited to play a on-train poker tournament and then be the second one out. That was fun.
Rip.
I still got the M&Ms though. So in the
did.
end, who really won?
I had one really good turn of poker at the beginning of the game, and I got overconfident.
Yeah, you get that one good hand early on, and then you were like, oh, I got all this, and you just kept betting, and then
I think mostly it was because I didn't really know what hands were
Yeah.
good and what hands were not good. So I was like, if that one that I didn't know was good was really good, maybe
then these
these
other ones
all
are also
good.
really good. Yeah, and then Jade just built up like all of the chips, and then
Yeah.
lost,
And then lost.
and then lost. Okay, got to double check there. I forget who won.
Yeah.
I wasn't paying attention because I still got the M&Ms.
I believe it. But yeah, and then we came back, and then that following week was all strike activity. And
All of it was
we
strike
didn't go to
activity.
any classes. I had a midterm.
Yeah.
Which I went
I
to.
saw some of my classes were canceled. Some of them were streamed.
Mhm.
Shapiro has still not said a word to me about whether class happens. I assume it's been happening, but I haven't been able to get to it.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, if you haven't been able to tell, this is our next bullet point. It is the ongoing graduate student strike,
Mhm.
fighting for a cost of living adjustment. This week they started a full-on teaching strike meaning that starting Monday, what was it, 11th or 12th? Something like that. No, it must have been the 10th. The 10th. Monday the 10th, they started picket lines at the 2 campus entrances, and the way that Santa Cruz UCSC's campus is set up, you can shut down the entire campus that way, especially when you have the solidarity of the Metro bus drivers, and they will not drive Metro buses up onto campus. They won't cross that picket line. That leaves probably huge portion of the students without transportation up to campus. It's a huge hill that takes 30 minutes to walk up, or more. So that's why classes have been canceled and things like that, oftentimes in solidarity with the striking grad students, not just because of transportation issues.
It's a very interesting kind of dilemma too, because as I wholly support them and what they're going for, but also I'm paying for my classes and would like to go to them.
Yeah, as an undergraduate, it's sort of a tough place to be, because you want to be fully behind these people that these graduate students that work really hard, that are your TAs and form a huge part of your education. But at the same time, you're sort of, you lost a whole week out of a 10-week quarter because of this strike. So it's sort of a tough place to be, at least for me as an undergraduate. That's where I am.
No, I think overall it's I think for most people it's a tough place to be. For some folk on the rarely visited for me RUCSC, they are much more vocally angry about it, and it just kind of bums me out to read it, because I'm like, oh wow, you guys it just bums me out.
Yeah. There's definitely, I think, a large portion of the campus. I think it goes pretty by department. I feel like there are certain departments in which they have a general sense of like not being for these things, whereas I think in the games and the arts and more the humanities type things, people are more. There isn't that culture that there is in like math and computer science, that students are meant to be poor.
And it's like in out, must be out in 4 years kind of mentality. Like games is so unique in its in the way that is a CS program for half of them, but it has the culture of a creative program, which I think is so nice to have.
I definitely agree. Like, I wouldn't have enjoyed getting a pure CS degree at like UC San Diego, where you're just doing pure CS and you have that culture of like, we're doing CS, and it's not a great culture.
It's that kind of it's a you work until you die kind of culture. And
not great for mental health.
No, it is not great for mental health. There's good perks to kind of what comes out of just being able to do science in a creative space, which is I don't have a good word for it. I'm going to end it there. I don't have a good word for it. I'm just going to leave it at that.
That's okay. I think the tangible ways that the strike has impacted our team specifically are important to talk about as well.
Yeah, I think that's kind of, now that we've kind of covered
the strike
what's happening
in general,
and kind of our loose thoughts about it. It's a tough thing to go 100% for, 100% against. You've kind of got to weigh both what you're getting out of the university and
I think,
wanting to support those people, the people that you really care about.
I think in the abstract, without you can finish your thought.
Well, my thought was just that, as I said earlier, the grad students, at least for me, have been a really formative part of my experience here and my education, a really positive part. So, but at the same time, I don't feel educated enough on the issue to, really speak with any sort of authority about it. So, okay, back to you, Alex.
I was just gonna say, like, in the abstract, like, without any of our like opinions on these events, there are like concrete effects that it has on our team and the way that we have structured our team. Especially with regards to our everybody in-person meeting. I think not having that on Tuesday when we normally would have that has severely impacted like our productivity during this week. Without having that like group huddle of where we're at, what are we doing?
No, we weren't able to have any stand-ups.
We haven't had any stand-ups because it just wouldn't have worked. we've tried having them with like half the people remote, and it's like this
full remote wouldn't.
Full remote wouldn't. No. I don't think it would be useful. I thought about having people write in, but even then, it's like that is not the same kind of.
Yeah, it's not the same thing. Only not everybody would read everyone.
Yeah, probably only I would read it.
No, I would probably read them too.
Oh, you would read it?
I would read it too. I make
no promises.
But yeah.
They're not that long.
No, it's true. I think that what would happen more for me is if people were sending them like at all hours of the day. Like I turn off my phone by 11-ish every night. If you guys are talking at midnight or 2 a.m. in the Discord, I'm missing it. I don't usually go back and read. I mean, sometimes I'll skim and see if I missed anything important.
No, I wouldn't.
Sometimes
like if they
you're
came
talking
in
at 1 a.m.
Yeah.
You know what? Sometimes I wake up at 1 a.m. and I say something.
All of us have been in one of those chats at 1 a.m.
I haven't.
I had that very long talk with Christy about the strike like 3 days ago.
It's true. I'm still battling with my strict 10 p.m. bedtime, where I wake up and I'm like, a lot has happened.
A lot's happened
at midnight to 2 a.m. That's the hot window for our team.
It's the hot window for like it's not really the hot window for valuable production chat. It's the hot window when the chat and the memes channel blow up.
Yes, it's the hot window for our Discord notifications.
For the
like,
social.
Oh man, we can. We're done doing the things that have kept us up until 1 a.m. Memes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's time for some memes.
And that is definitely fair. But yeah, so not having that meeting on Tuesday had a big impact on us, and then we tried to make up for it with other meetings throughout the week and some remote meetings, and I think that
it's kind of working.
I think it kind of worked. I feel like we didn't do nothing, but we could have done more, and we could have been more unified as a group if we had the on-campus time where we get to see everybody in person and had our in-person stand-ups.
Yeah.
I just remembered there's been at least 3 to 4 members of the team who've been out sick for various days
people
of
have
the
just
week.
been dying.
So that's also impacted our productivity because you know, when we had a smaller get together at Casey's on Tuesday in place of our full group meeting, and you know, I think most of the people
maybe everyone can get there, and then everyone's like, "No, I'm like dying."
There was at least 2 people that were legitimately like, I am sick and I am staying home, and it's like, power to you, please don't get us
sick. And then
sick.
there were people that were trapped on one side of the picket line.
Yeah, we have one member who lives on campus, which is, I think it's more difficult to get from on campus to downtown than it maybe even is to get from like off campus to somewhere like, I don't. It's just difficult to get around
because they've got a double bus and cross the picket line. And
it's true.
With how the meetings go, they would have to do that. Actually, getting back up on, because the meetings end late, would be after the line.
Yeah, that would just be
has
normal.
Gone to bed. So unless it starts to turn into night raves, which very well could happen.
Very well could.
I'd go to that. Like, oh, it's a rave now?
And then the third thing impacting our productivity during this week has been midterms, because it is like week 6 is kind of like the midterm week for a lot of classes, especially like the more pure CS, pure math type classes, which I don't think a lot of people are in. But I know
it's just you and me. I think you and I are the only ones that had like midterms.
I think Christy also had a midterm, or at least was talking about having a midterm. I don't know if the sound class that everyone is in had a midterm.
It did not have a midterm. It has a project due at the end of the month.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah. I had my full group creative writing workshop pushed back from Monday to Wednesday, so that tentatively counts as a midterm.
I'd say that counts as a midterm.
Yeah.
Actual exams, though.
Yeah, sit-down exams. Only the one.
And it was a take-home, so it wasn't really.
Yeah, mine was a sit-down. But yeah, I think there is like a little spike in the workload in other classes during this time, even if there's not.
It was kind of always expected to be a low productivity week, but it was just hit by multiple other things that made you go, "Oh wow, there's a lot."
When you have
else going on,
the sickness, the strike, and the midterms all like coalescing, I think it made this second week of this sprint kind of. Like, I don't want to say dead, because I think a lot of good stuff has been done. Like, I've seen some concept art that I really liked.
Work's been getting done. It's just it feels dead because we haven't been able to get updates, so we don't know if it's happening.
I think it's like very dispersed. Like, the work has been done, but it's all been individual work, and there hasn't been that like get together and see where we're at type stuff.
I think on a very personal level, when there's a strike and your classes are all canceled, it's very hard to build up the motivation to like get to work. Like, if I wake up and I'm in my pajamas and I can't get to campus to even go to the gym, it's very much like, well, might as well have a pajama morning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Like, all right, I'm just gonna. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about what I could have done with the past 2 days where I didn't go to class, like I could have probably frameworked the entire project out during that time if I had worked 8-hour days type situation, but it's very difficult to get the motivation to do that kind of thing.
It's rough. I think too, we're at least on frameworking the back 2 loops of the game. We're waiting to get a better look at what they're exactly going to be, because in terms of actually frameworking it out, it requires right-clicking and then shift right-clicking and then Control-C and then Control-Ving it into multiple scenes. So it's not like getting a full framework is difficult, but because we don't know what the scripts are going to be yet. So at the most we can do is make the new scenes.
But yeah, lack of structure for me is just bad in general for my productivity. Like, if I have even one thing that I have to commit to in a day, it's like I can get up and I can feel like, okay, I have this block of time set out until I need to be on campus, and then I'll do that thing, and then I have another block of time, and then it's time to relax. So for me, having no structure in my week is really easy for all of my responsibilities to sort of be like, oh, I don't have to do this right now, and then I never get it done.
It's the exact same way with me. Everything was like, if I don't have the things that I have to actually wake up for, they just I'm like, oh, I could just do this thing, not now.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a great week for recharging.
That's
I've read so much manga, but but in terms of productivity, I think if other people have personalities like me and Casey, that's probably been a factor in the productivity of the week as well.
Yeah, I think that's definitely fair. I think but I don't think it's like the end of the world that this week has been.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Has been on a low end.
There's a level of concern that if this strike continues in the way it has, that next week would be that way, and then I would start to get concerned.
I think if class on Tuesday, for example, was canceled, I think I would make much more of an effort to get everybody together anyway.
Oh, 100%.
Like, can anybody offer rides? Can anybody go get Jade?
Make sure that everyone can go to these meetings.
Yeah, I think we'd make much more of a concerted effort. But since it was just this one thing and there were other factors going on.
Yeah. If it happens again, though, I think, it would be, if you're sick, don't go. But, we can't hold out for other, I can't get there excuses.
Yeah, and we'd have to sort of, if we can't get everybody, we still need to make decisions and then communicate those decisions out.
Yeah, so, hopefully this next Tuesday, which it seems increasingly likely that we will have to meet off campus, we make sure that we have ways to get everybody there.
Yeah.
I'm nodding.
We're all nodding.
Yes, there's collective nodding on the video version of this that doesn't exist.
It's true. All right. Is there anything else we want to say about the strike before we transition into what's next? I think we've already done a little transitioning into it, but
yeah, I think that's all good on the strike. We can go full bore into what's next.
Yeah.
So what's next is this sprint ends on Tuesday. We will be trying to plan our next 2-week sprint on Tuesday for our final sprint to the vertical slice.
Yeah.
The next sprint is the last sprint before the vertical slice.
Yeah, not the final sprint.
No. We have many more sprints to come.
There are many more sprints. There is is there a sprint after the vertical in this quarter that seems to be meh?
I'm guessing it's going to be a lot of playtesting the vertical. And
I think that week's dedicated to playtesting the vertical, and I think some people will have sprints in that week. I think we should probably have some kind of sprint.
I think we will have, at least on the tech side, have an unofficial sprint.
Yeah.
And there might be some, I'm still thinking there might be some individual assignments,
probably, like reflections and whatnot. Probably.
Yeah. I don't know for sure though.
Yeah. I think there's work to get done in those 2 weeks that I think we would be remiss to not take advantage of.
I definitely agree with that. And I think people will, I would hope people would go to the vertical slice playtesting and be inspired to continue working on it, even without the pressure from above.
There's those of us that get the direct pressure from above and then go, well, we can. I guess there's no pressure from above us, but we could put some on there anyway. It's like, hey, I still want to get some work done. Be nice.
Yeah. So this next 2 weeks though, preparing for that playtestable vertical slice, I think will be I don't want it to be crunch, obviously, but I think it will be hopefully more productive than this past sprint, which I think isn't a high bar.
No, it's not a high bar to be more closer to sprint 2 than to sprint 3.
Yes. I think that's a good way to put it.
We get an on par amount of work done as we did in that in sprint 2. Maybe a little bit more. I don't know, because it'll be a lot of like there were a lot of projects that we're doing that week too, and there are less in this one, so it would kind of be things wind down a little bit, and then maybe we can get really into it, because I finally have our nice big list of sounds, so I can finally just take a couple days and get really into making them sound weird, which I've been looking forward to doing.
Yes, I believe it. But yeah, I think getting some finalized art and getting some finalized sound into the game will also improve morale.
I agree.
I do hope we can get more time with people, not necessarily in Unity, but people looking at how it looks in Engine.
Yes.
Because I feel like there is a lot of disconnect between what's happening in Engine and what's happening at the various meetings. That needs to be sort of reconciled.
Yeah.
I don't know if Tuesday will be the time to do that, but I think at some point it would be good to have.
We can take some time on Tuesday to be like, hey, let's look at all these things that we have in Engine right now.
Yeah.
This is in general kind of what the space is going to have to look like, because it's what it's what this the engine's capable of doing. This is as far as we can go.
Yeah. I think that's good. But yeah, mostly it'll just be we'll probably get one more puzzle we'll implement.
Yeah. One or two.
One or two. I think one or two more puzzles to implement. A lot of general structure stuff, sort of making everything work across the gap of the scene transition.
Yes.
Implementing sounds, implementing the assets, arranging things so that they look good.
Going back into the void of Xcode.
Yes. Attempt again to get it onto an actual iPad.
Yeah. I have more hope this time than I did last time.
That is good. That is good. So yeah, all those things. I think we're ready to do all those things. I think we can do all those things. Like I'm not worried about our ability to make a good vertical slice representative of our goals for the game.
I think that I am on the same page. At first I was really worried about the amount of assets that we need to create, but we've scaled back some of the goals for the vertical slice, like not as many rooms and things like that. So I'm feeling more like we have a achievable amount of assets that we can create in the next sprint. And
I think it's very possible.
Yeah, and if we create them, then we have extra time, we can create some more. But I mean, I'm feeling good about our art goals, and I plan to have a lot more smaller art check-ins, like either 1-on-1 or sort of 2-on-1, like constantly. Over Discord probably, or if people come in person, we'll see. That's something I've wanted to implement for a while. It didn't happen this week because of all the, previously mentioned issues with meetings in general this week. But, I'm planning to really make that happen this upcoming sprint because I think it's necessary for the vertical slice.
Yeah, and I think as long as we keep in mind that, like, the vertical slice is a communication tool between us and our instructors and not, like, a polished thing that we're supposed to be getting, like, finalized playtest feedback sort of on, I think we'll be in a good spot.
Vertical slice is only halfway through this entire project.
It's true.
Not even halfway, a little before halfway.
Yeah, and it is still in pre-production. Like, if we were a company, this would be, we've made this, we're going to go show it to corporate and be like, we made a thing, corporate, give us money.
Yeah.
So but instead of money,
really
we're getting grades, and we're getting to move on to 172 without exploding.
Yes, and then we can explode in 172.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
I'm curious to see if anything will explode.
I don't think anything will, based on what I've seen, but I don't
think anything
curious.
will either, but it's always kind of like because there were some ideas that, like, even when they were put through, I didn't know much about what they were.
Yeah.
And I still don't. So I'm curious to see, like, where are they at now?
Yeah, definitely me personally, I don't have my finger on the pulse of any other projects.
No, I barely have my finger on the pulse of a couple of them. Like,
Yeah.
I know a little bit about Magic Trick
Mhm.
and a little bit about Jetpack Samurai,
Mhm.
and that's it.
Yeah. And we all know Kangarumble is going to be great.
We all know Kangarumble's going to be great, yeah.
But yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I had a thought, and
What is
that
your
thought
thought?
was, oh God.
It's gone.
That thought
It's
is
totally
gone?
It's
It
gone
was.
now.
I had a thought while Casey was talking, and I was
Uh-huh.
like, I'm gonna hold on to that thought, and I'm gonna say that thought.
That thought was a balloon that you could not quite grasp.
No,
Yeah,
it had
no.
something to do with. Oh yes, okay. I've
Okay.
arrived at my thought.
Nice.
Issues in our team moving forward. I don't foresee any explosions. Maybe that's hopeful, but what I do foresee is that we potentially, or almost assuredly, will have the same kind of small bumps in the road that we've had so far, mostly on those personal levels of communication and slight amounts of friction between people who have different working styles or who have different like pre-existing like relationships that are, you know, impacting how they communicate and things like that. So I do not think that those things will go away, but I don't think that they will snowball into anything that is explosion worthy.
I think
No.
they might even die down a little bit once it's like into full-on asset production, because I know a lot of them have come in on going, because there's finalized asset production hasn't started yet. They're still like, oh, I could lean it slightly more what I want, or lean it slightly this way, because they haven't started yet. But I think that's part of what we want to nip in the bud on Tuesday when we go, all right, ideas are banned for 2 weeks. We're gonna make things based off the decisions we've made, and have something cool to show for it, rather than going, oh, but I could change it a little bit more.
Yeah, and I think that there will still be room for change after that, if we feel that it's needed. But I think there is
Yeah.
something to be said about leaning in to a certain style and then doing it and seeing how it goes, rather than experimenting so much at the lower levels. Yeah.
I think it's gonna go to like kind of looking at things in a more meta way than instead of like down in the weeds.
Yeah, I
Gonna-
think it's very easy to get lost in the weeds of an individual asset or individual script.
Because some of the ones I've seen, like our I forgot the name of the flasks. We looked it up, and I don't remember it now. We wrote it on a whiteboard, and I don't remember it now. But they look really cool. They have like the fractally liquids.
I wrote it
Look
down.
cool.
Do you want me to find out?
Let's find it.
the
Let's
name
remember
of this
that flask.
All
Let's
right, I'm pulling
educate the
up-
world.
I'm pulling up the our asset spreadsheet right
but-
now.
But those look really good. And the fractal interpretation of the liquids is really good, because we can just apply that texture to any space that liquid would fill.
Those liquids are
So-
in a Florence flask.
Florence flask. There we go.
It's
We
true.
remember now.
And they're transferred from a Florence flask into
a
a
graduated
graduated
cylinder.
cylinder.
Yep.
Yeah, these flasks were actually a really big part of scoping down on number of assets, because like a transparent flask asset that can be filled with various types of liquids is a much lower asset demand than different objects that need to be drawn for every.
An individual container for every liquid.
Yeah, so
So
that
you can put slightly more effort into making the liquid, which is the more important element, look cool, rather than the thing that it's in.
Yeah, so that's one of the decisions that has eased my fears as the art director a little bit. That we have made. We also cut out one of the very first puzzles from the first loop, and thus for the vertical slice, and so that also has put me at ease
Yeah.
in terms of
I
what
think-
we need to create.
I think that general framing of like we were doing 3 puzzle, 3 puzzle, 3 puzzle, that's it, was not the best progression loop either. I think a build up is good, because in a perfect world it would be 2, 3, 4, but we obviously don't have the time to do 2, 3, 4. So 2, 3, 3 is a more reasonable goal, and a more a better progression curve of from start to finish. There's more to do as you go on instead of the same amount of things to do.
Yeah, there's that intensity over time graph.
Yeah, so I think we're in a good spot. I think we've got a plan, and I think we will see you next time if you want to do our official
Oh, I have
sign-off.
to do an official sign off? Okay. Well, then yes, if that's where we want to end it, then that's where it's going to end. I'm Casey,
I'm Amanda.
And I'm Alex.
and you've been listening to the Mobius Development Podcast. Thank you for listening.